you guys ready to have some fun?
Yep, totally.
All right, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Tune Up, a Shopmonkey podcast where we talk about the automotive industry and car care, specifically that 99% of your car's life that's spent outside of the dealership. In this episode, we discuss front of house shop staffing, specifically service writers and the role that they play in producing a high-performing shop. I'm Justin Simpson, and I'm joined by Zach Buffum, and the two of us co-host the Tune Up podcast alongside a bunch of our amazing Hoonigan colleagues. What's up, everybody? How you doing?
What's up, man?
What's up?
Good.
Can I call you guys JSZB as like a John Claude Van Damme reference? Like by your powers combined, you are you are JSZB.
Or we could just be Jay-Z.
Ooh, bold.
That might
bold
be trademark.
choice.
Let's be careful. Let's be careful.
Whoa. Copyright strike. Boom.
Legal protections. YouTube has censored it all.
Zach, I'm loving the Ferrari in your backdrop there. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, I'll move it so it's easier to see next time. But yeah, thanks.
Everybody loves an F40 moment, so good stuff.
Yeah, what's my quote? Angles over. Crap, I butchered it. Who cares? But anyway, let's go ahead and introduce the rest of our tune-up crew. Here we go. In P1, we have Jonathan Supra MK4 Moretti.
Ooh, the good one.
The Mark
good
IV.
Supra.
Okay. There's a theme to this one too, guys. Let's see if you can figure it out. In second, we have Mike RX-7 Bordeaux. What's up, man?
What's up, man? I got it on lock.
Mike,
You got it?
Mike,
Okay. Let's.
You're specifically in a rotary for a reason, by the way. If,
I noticed. I was going to say anything.
We are only putting Bordeaux in rotaries
From now on, rotary only.
If it's the RX-7, I think it is, though. It's okay. It's all right.
All right. Let's see. Gallagher Challenger Hellcat Wilson.
Hey, how's it going?
Ooh.
It's a good one.
And last but not least, Lucas. He who doesn't risk doesn't win. Dodge Charger Conyer. What's up, man?
What's going on, everyone? Am I still reading these in Polish, Zach?
Please do. Please do.
All right. Kto nie ryzykuje, ten nie wygrywa.
All right. What do you guys think? What's the theme?
All right. Yeah, totally.
I
Are you
like
guys
that's.
trying to stump me or something?
It's got to be Fast and Furious.
Hey.
Yeah.
Come on.
Good job,
Yeah,
guys.
dude. Yeah, Fast and Furious 3, Beelside RX-7 wide body. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Weed whacker, Mike?
I'll take the weed whacker, man. I'm gonna sneak an LS in there at
It's
some point.
It's a beautiful weed whacker.
It's gorgeous. Absolutely flawless. Yes.
Lucas, do you get the reference for your Polish saying?
I want to say that was a quote or a line in the movie.
Not completely, but it is reminiscent of a very famous scene in the first Fast and the Furious movie where the
Say the
Charger
quote
is
again?
oh yeah.
I don't got friends, I got family.
Not that line, Mike.
I'm sorry, I was excited.
I've been waiting all week for someone to ask me to say that.
Can we just talk about Fast and Furious, guys?
That's just what we're going for all the time. No, the quote is "He who doesn't risk doesn't win." And if you remember the train drag racing scene, with the Charger, I feel like that's very, very reminiscent of Polish culture, apparently.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
the Brian O'Connor story, right? Is high risk, high reward.
Live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Welcome to the internet's best Fast and Furious appreciation podcast.
Next time, we're just going to do a full episode on Fast and the Furious. We could spend, an hour on each episode. Gallagher's stoked about Fast and the Furious. That surprises me.
I love the Fast and the Furious series, franchise, whatever you want to call it. I get so much crap from my friends for this, by the way, because it's like they don't even car people. I'm like, that's stupid. I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's fun and just back off.
If you want to
from
have a
your shade.
good weekend, you go down to your local Bevmo, you get a 6-pack of the Racer 5 ale, and then you
yes.
watch all of the Fast and Furious movies in order with your buddies, and you're going to have a good time. Something fun will come from that day.
Shout out Bear Republic Brewing if you want to interested in sponsoring us. We're available. Just, go ahead. Zach at shopmonkey.io. Thank you.
Also, because I know we're on, we're going to eventually this will land on YouTube. I want to shout out another great YouTube channel, Movies with Mikey. He does these video essays on movies. Film Joy, Movies with Mikey. We should all do video essays on the Fast and Furious movies. Okay, I'm done. I promise.
All right.
Dude, I'm
All
totally
right.
down. At least for the first 3. You lose me after the third one. I start to taper off in interest. I need more beer before we go through the rest of them.
6-pack's only getting Mike through one Fast and Furious episode. So yeah, I think, going from Fast and the Furious, it's hard to jump into this hot take, but it's worth saying how much Fast and the Furious inspired at least me to dig even more into car culture. Right? It is one of those ones that just, as cheesy it can be in the more modern movies, the OG stuff is pretty awesome. And Moretti, of course, your vehicle is the best. I think the Mark IV Supra for sure.
Here's the thing that bums me out is this is a running joke, but I don't think I would fit very comfortably in a Mark IV Supra. I
can tell you from sitting in one, you won't.
Yeah, Mike and I share similar proportions, and I love to look at them though. I can appreciate them from afar.
I like just the first scene of Fast and Furious. No, I'm just kidding. No,
Any non-Fast and the Furious fans on this podcast? Does anyone dare say so, even if you're not?
I mean,
we'd all be lying if it wasn't at least part of the reason why we're all here. Like,
I think so.
It was the most formative thing for our generation.
I look forward
Wow,
to
it was the most formative thing for
car
our
culture.
generation.
Most formative car culture.
Just end of the quote.
Yeah, fine. I'll own it. That's fine. Yeah,
that's a bold statement, Mike. But I'm thinking
that was
about
super
it now.
bold. I'm like taking it back.
All my sandwiches are tuna, no crust.
Nobody likes the tuna.
It literally changed Mike's life.
All right, the topic for today. Let's talk about service writers in the shop. All right, so we kind of have a general idea of the role. People have their thoughts on what it is. Let's talk about maybe like the impact, the do's and don'ts, the component that they play in making a shop successful. What are those skills that are the money makers, and maybe the inverse at some point? Like, what are the things that can really bring a shop down for a service writer who's not doing well? What are some initial thoughts you guys have?
I think service writers are glue for the shop. Without a good service writer, the shop's really going to have a hard time being successful in general. In terms of like a good service writer's qualities, I think that their job is really coming from 3 different angles. You have an owner who wants to see margin and profitability every single time a car passes through the door. You have a customer who has almost the complete opposite. They want to spend as little money as possible. And then you have a tech who needs a certain number of hours to be happy and go home that day without being upset. And you have to find a balance between all 3 of those things. Every car that flows through the door all day, every day. It takes a special type of person. I don't know if it's something that everybody is really geared for. I think you really need to be very patient and be very willing to learn on the fly. And I don't know what would be qualities. I guess the qualities opposite of that is somebody who is, I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
I mean,
I'll pick up the thread there.
Before we jump in real quick, maybe Gallagher, as you jump in, can we just like level set on in today's day and age, like what does a service writer do and why are they so critical? Because there could be people out there listening, just say, okay, I interact with this person at the front desk when I go into my shop. Or I'm a shop starting up, like how do I think about, scaling into a position where I have a service writer and what are they doing for me?
Sure. And I think it's important for us because Gallagher, I know you're going to go, but I just think it's important for us to level set that our experience, where most of us here, is from the independent side. And we probably won't get too much into what a dealer service writer does and thinks about and looks at, because it is going to be a little different. The volume of scale and the job of a service writer at the dealership is as more of a service salesperson, probably much more so than the independent service writer who's doing a lot more than just selling jobs. So I just think that's important to call out, because the tone of the podcast is to help people understand this industry and the world. And so just wanted to give that little bit of focus on how we're probably going to talk about it for the most part.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Reddy, both you and I coming out of the independent side, as having run shops and service writing. I think to answer your question, Justin, I'd start by saying, right, service writer, I think, Mike, you said it well. It's the glue that kind of keeps things moving. They're, responsible for several aspects. One, I think first and foremost, at least my view, was selling work, right? Was keeping, that whole process of, taking in customers, taking appointments, getting estimates created, and having technicians look at cars, and then creating more estimates and getting that work sort of flywheel of things spinning to keep the bays full, to keep the technicians full. Because if that stops, there's no business, right? So for me, it was always priority number one is selling work and keeping hours on the tickets to get out to the technicians. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with that. There's a whole aspect of customer service that you're, especially if you're working in, like I worked in, I'd say 4 and 5 star independent shops, so a little higher end, you're doing a high level of customer service. It's very, you're trying to dedicate. Sure.
And Gallagher, it's borderline marketing for the shop as well.
Exactly. Yeah. There's direct and indirect marketing. I joke that you wore like 16 hats, right? And that was one of them. Yeah. Like, you're doing customer service, you're doing sales, those are kind of intertwined, and that's kind of the bulk of it. But you're also oftentimes the parts manager if your shop's not big enough to have a separate parts department, which probably most independents, at least from my experience, aren't. And yeah, there's marketing, like I'm managing, email marketing and direct marketing and websites and social media as part of all that too. I think, to pivot that, you get a sense for how chaotic that could be in the middle of phone calls and emails and, problems coming from the back of the shop from the technicians. The thing I always felt that made me successful, the chief skill I had that made me successful, was a touch of ADHD. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek, but not really.
I feel personally attacked.
I did not do very well in grade school because of this, right? I couldn't sit still. I couldn't stay focused on one thing. But you put me in that environment where there's actually 3 things I need to focus on relatively simultaneously. I'm not going to split hairs over whether we can do 2 things at once, but that catered well to that, right? I can keep up on the phone. I can hold in the back of my head that I got a technician who needs me to go back and talk to him about something. I can deal with the next thing that comes up. It is stressful. I think if you were a type of person who needed more methodical, focused work and maybe a calmer, quieter work environment, you're really going to suffer. You kind of have to thrive.
Why are you in a shop in the first place?
Yeah. I could see that being a great technician, right?
I know some calm service writers that are actually quite well, because they're just unfazable. So it's like the shop could be on fire and they're like, yeah, I'm happy to talk about this.
We'll get that done for you tomorrow.
That's the also scariest person that you can run into in the wild. Just like, nothing phases you, huh?
Like, tell us about your experience with service writers.
Well, I agree with Gallagher 100%. Sorry, Moretti. I think someone who thrives in chaos is definitely a good fit for a service writer. I think it's a special type of person that can handle several different things coming at them at one time, and a service writer certainly has to handle that. They have customers flooding in through the door while screening phone calls and talking to techs and making sure that they're building out tickets that are making the shop money. And I think salespeople make for good service writers. I think that's probably pretty intuitive, right? You're really trying to, at the end of the day, just figure out what the customer actually wants and solve for that and make sure they see the value in that. And I think if you find somebody who knows how to do that, keep them. That is a good service writer. Getting someone to that point, there's not really like a grade school for service writing, really. And I think that's really where the pain point is for most shops is it's a long haul getting someone up to speed to be a competent service writer. And you have to invest a lot of time and energy into that person only to potentially find out that it's just not a good fit for them. So I think that is, in my experience, what I ran into with service writers is, a couple of years of getting them up to speed, and then they just never get past that, whatever plateau they fall on.
Yeah, and then when we hear everything I'm hearing you guys saying, I know the question of kind of skills and whatnot, but it kind of boils down to that customer service, time management, being able to multitask and kind of work in a team setting and whatnot. And it makes me think, if kind of along the topic of hiring, retention for shops, with the amount of layoffs and everything that have been happening over the last few months, last few quarters. It's safe to say that some folks coming out of different industries hold a lot of those skills. And I feel like if that was marketed a little more clear from shops towards this audience that's now available for work, a lot of those skills are out there and found in different jobs. It's how do you attract them to the automotive side of it and make it a place that's fun to work, but also sure, it has to be lucrative, but I think fun to work and something that connects with them and also leans on those skills. So if shops are looking for folks with that skill set and having a hard time building it up, this arguably could be a really great environment to look for folks outside of the industry that might want to come in and check it out. So, but I agree. I only saw service writers from the dealer perspective when I kind of worked hand in hand with them with customer kind of handoffs and whatnot for vehicles. And even in the dealer setting, they were very much the face and the marketing department of the service center for that dealership. But I agree with Moretti and Gallagher that it differs for independent shops and dealers on that front. But I don't know, just think it's something I'm thinking about, because I know hiring retention is such a hot topic, and I feel like it just ties right into this, because it's one of those roles where you don't necessarily have to be a technician to be a service writer, as long as you have those skills to manage the front of house.
Yeah,
or front
I
shop.
mean, I'll lean on my own story, right? I was a web developer. I was a technical manager, and I went into service writing out of that field when I got burnt out. And I think that obviously it helped that I had a little bit of a personal passion for. I worked at an aftermarket shop, so I had a personal passion for motorsports. But the job's the same, right? If you strip away the vehicle specifics, right? It's, can you find someone who has a technical mind, can listen to technical information, digest it, and parrot it to someone else, or even make it simpler in the repeating of it? And can you do that in both directions? So you have a customer that comes in. Can you understand what is the issue for this person? So I don't want to go too broad with for many reasons, but let's break it down to a real simple interaction, right? I need to understand who you are. What is it that you've come to me for help with? Is because oftentimes the service writer will be asked for a quote for a job, but a good service writer knows, do you want a quote for the job, or is there a problem with your vehicle that you think this job will fix? And do you want me to fix the problem, or do you want me to quote you for the job you've asked? That's a very special skill set to what is the question behind the question. Digesting that, writing it up, sometimes interacting with your technicians if it's past your ability, which was, candidly, often my quotes were past my mechanical ability. But so the ability to digest that and then ask my technicians for how would you approach X, Y, and Z, write that up, and then again, share what the technicians have said about it to the customer and have that conversation as to how we would approach it, what is most important, what's less important, and what's the path forward, for success on both sides. And I had no automotive experience. That's all the same thing I did with, again, in my personal background was web development. So what does a customer want for their web presence? How do I translate that to me and my team for what do we build? And then how do I then translate it again back to the customer on, here's what that will look like. Here's what time looks like around it. Here's what cost looks like around it. And that can come from any technical, I don't like the word middleman, but I think it is an accurate term, right? You're translating between these two different teams. You have to speak both languages. So you're really a translator.
Or be very curious enough to learn both languages.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand subtext, right? I think that's perfect. Yeah, you really have to understand the underlying words behind what the person's actually saying, both from the customer and the technician side. And I don't envy a service writer having to listen to me explain some of my jobs. I've gotten better at it over the years, but A tech can really just lay it all out. They don't care about how the customer hears it. As far as they're concerned, like here's everything that the car needs. So for a service writer to intuitively read what the tech is trying to accomplish and convey that to the customer effectively to where they're actually willing to spend money, it's a pretty unique talent.
I would argue too. I don't think that they need to fully understand it. I worked with several service advisors who didn't have deep technical automotive knowledge. What they were, sure, you can read your handwriting. What they were, the characteristics they had in common that made them good was they were good listeners, they were good question askers, and they had good customer service skills, right? So there was like a base attitude that was underlying that of like, I'm always seeking to understand and serve, whether it's the technician or the customer, right? And be that bridge in the middle. The technical aptitude, a lot of times they would learn through that. I think I've brought this anecdote up before, but I remember a guy who owned a pretty successful shop in the Midwest saying he loved to hire bank tellers, particularly because they had been taught all these really, really high level customer service skills. Sure, they didn't probably have any of the technical knowledge. He didn't worry about that. He's like, I can teach the technical knowledge. It's really hard for me to find people who have the attitude that I'm looking for. And so he would hire for that attitude, right? And then worry about the aptitude portion later. I think that's pretty common.
Now that you say that, I think, Lucas, you said the tech industry has seen a lot of people who are now looking for a new track, and product managers get out there into some shops. I think product manager, like I work at a software company now, and I'm like, man, that's a product manager to a T. Yep.
And there's a layer of empathy behind the scenes as well, in every interaction that they're having as well. And that's one of those things where it's definitely maybe not something that a traditional service writer or historically has been part of that role, but it's something that is kind of talked about and a little more relevant in different jobs that folks are coming from, is having that level of empathy that you walk into it. So as you learn, there's things you can't learn. And one of those is through experience, you kind of learn how to empathize with customers and with the folks you're working with. And if you could be that middle person between the techs and your customers that has everything Gallagher just said, and you put in that layer of empathy, that can make you a really successful service writer. But yeah, I agree, Moretti. I think it's a career path, and I didn't think about this beforehand because I looked at the wrong script before this, but I think it's a...
This isn't scripted. Hold on. It's not scripted.
Oh, yeah. This is an off-the-cuff podcast.
Whoa. Not script. I'm sorry. The overall theme, but I just think that it connects to what's going on today and how that can be an interesting segue for shop owner. Any shop owners listening, I think it's a interesting avenue to go down, and in terms of who you should be marketing towards if you're looking to hire folks.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing then is like the ability to juggle. That's something that you're probably not going to get on the job. You either have that or you don't. Maybe there's some exceptions. The other one is that the empathy, the curiosity, the humility, the willingness to listen and learn as you go. What are some of those other things that you can think of? Because we've said earlier at the top of this, there's a certain set of skills. I've got a certain set of skills that we're looking for in a service writer. We want them to do these 16 things all at once.
I will find you. I will quote you. I will quote you, and I will repair you.
So yeah, some of those hats we can learn as you go. Or what are the other ones that maybe you can't?
I think that the other big one that served me pretty well was getting a really good handle on how to stay organized. I think that's a pretty basic thing. I think that, let me say this, I'll correct myself. That sounds like a basic thing. It's easier said than done, especially when you're talking about the chaotic environments. But I mean, it could be all kinds of things. And typically service writer, at least the shops I was in, was fairly independent. Like the owners there, they're going to have some opinions on some things, but a lot of times you're left to structure yourself and your day with kind of like, here's the end objective, right? Which is usually sell as much work as you can, get there however you need, as long as you're staying ethical, right? That was kind of the loose framework for the role. So staying organized, right? How do I build quotes? I would, like some practical things, I would get down to being like, okay, I'm going to batch all of my estimate writing into one block of time in the middle of the morning, right? I tend to get all my repair orders back. I can sit down and write 5 estimates, send them out, do all my selling in the early afternoon. Some of it's done the same day, some of it's done the next day. I created these structures, like as an example, that gave me a flow to the day that made it predictable for the rest of my team and for me. So I'm not going crazy trying to figure out what to do next. And that was hard to do. I actually worked with a service writer who struggled to do that and would coach them through how, like, hey, let's build a system. Like maybe it's Post-it notes and alarm clocks, whatever you need, but we need to get you like on a repeatable system so that you can accomplish the task you need to accomplish in the time that you have during the day.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think to
add in
double-click
technical
too-
savviness. Well, I was just going to throw in, Moretti, add in technical savviness of not technical automotive, but like just the tools that they're using behind the scenes, whether it's POS, CRM, SMS, or like anything that they're using, if that's a skill that they're coming in with.
Yeah. if you had access to a great, simple to use, like easy to understand
all-in-one
tool. Yeah. I want to double click too, because Gallagher mentioned something that I think is interesting. And as we look at the different types of shops, right? So I often see owners taking on the job of service writer as well as owner. And I think it's this kind of logical trap that we get stuck in, where I'm spending all my time trying to get business in the door and I'm not working on the business. I'm working in the business. It's a very hashtag terminology, right? Or whatever. But the idea of the added expense of bringing in a service writer is lost money to the shop and to the owner, when in fact it probably flipped. Like when I was a service writer, again, I like to lean on my story just because I know it very well. But I made an agreement with the shop owner that I started to service write at, was like, hey, if I'm not paying for myself in X months, I'll leave. Like, no big deal. I think that I was able to level up the entire shop and the income that everybody was able to bring in, because I was primarily focused on just bringing business into the shop, whether that's marketing, whether that's answering the phones, whether that's writing quotes, that's following up on quotes, right? There's a lot more work that goes into it. Whereas the owner was able to focus on doing really cool projects and things that leveled up the skill and ability and service offering of the shop, right? So I think that is an important thing to think about if you're an owner struggling with, I'd love to make the shop do more or do this different or whatever it may be. Well, bring in a service writer and find someone who you're willing to work with. And on the flip side, if you've never done service writing, it can be potentially a great career if it's something you've not looked at. And I also think I'm kind of hitting a bunch of different points here, but there is a responsibility from the folks at the shop to support the service writer too. The service writer's job is to make your job easier. If you're the owner, they want to make your job easier by taking all this appointment scheduling and follow up off of your plate, to free you up to work on the business, right? And for the techs, it's to get you away from having to answer customer questions, right? Keep you focused on doing what you do best, which is working on vehicles. But I also had, in my experience, I had technicians who would not want to get into it with me to tell me about, here's what this job is, here's the other things it touches that might benefit being done at the same time. And it was a very adversarial relationship. Whereas in the long run, I was very lucky to work with some technicians who would bring me over, show me what I was asking about, show me what that connected to and what potentially would benefit the customer to do at the same time, whether that's overlapping labor to save money for the customer, right? And all the things in between. So the shop has a responsibility to also train and help the service writer be good at conveying the shop's message back out to the customer. So it's a two-way street.
This almost begs the question, this might be a loaded question, but does the role service writer, does that name, should it change? Should it be elevated to something else? We've said so much in this podcast so far, and it makes me think like, oh, you hear this job title, service writer, and all I'm going to be doing is writing services. And it's a job that has so much more involved with it. It's almost, to your point, Moretti, a project manager, a customer relationship, manager, something along those lines. Like, this is more of an industry question. Does the industry take a step back and look at, hey, do we rebrand what this role actually is? Because it's more than just a service writer.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Because we called it out, right? I think service writer is a title that's carried over from the dealership. And like many things in independent service, there's ideas, titles, and statements and methods that are carried from the dealership to the independent world, which don't always apply with the same. Look, dealership service centers are squeaky, sorry, not squeaky, well fine-tuned machines, right? They've been optimized over and over and over by huge business models that make them very optimized for that environment. Not all of those ideas carry over correctly to the shop, where I think you're absolutely right. Most service writers I know in the independent space are doing much more than service writing.
Ready? And maybe Zach, I don't know if you think this is great in terms of some of the closing thoughts, but one thing that really just comes up to me is how to break that cycle. Like you said so much about what should be prioritized in your shop as an owner, and how to start thinking about how a service writer can provide benefit to you. What would you say? I mean, you put yourself in that position, right? Like you were asking for an opportunity to be in this role in the shop
Sure.
that you worked in. But for an owner from the other perspective who maybe hasn't thought about that yet and is kind of stuck in that cycle of just doing everything, what do they look at first? Like what do you evaluate to get yourself there? I'm just curious if anybody has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I certainly have some thoughts. I think one of the first things you have to look at is yourself. What do you want from the shop as your business? Is that what we might call a lifestyle business, where you like writing up tickets and you like that customer interaction and you want that to do it? There you go. If you want to grow the business, if you want to focus on other stuff that isn't answering phones, that's when you want to engage in the idea of bringing in another person to help manage it. And look, you're gonna also look at the fact that it's not going to always work. You're going to go through some people that aren't the right fit. You're going to go through someone who tries to steal parts from you. You're going to have some failures and some successes, but man, when it all clicks, it'll be awesome for everyone on the team, in my opinion.
Any other final thoughts out there?
I was just going to say, if anyone's listening to this and you've seen a job post for service writer, I wouldn't discredit it. I would take a look at the job listing, see if it lines up with some skills that you feel you have strengths in, but you're somewhat also interested in the automotive industry and kind of venturing down this path. I think that's one for me in this episode. That's my takeaway: is take a look at it. It's more than just a service writer role. It's a really important role. Who knows? You could become the face of that shop if it's done very well and be very successful in it. But that's not to say it's an easy role either. I think everyone's alluded to that a little bit. It can be daunting. It could be a little tricky at times. But I think with the right shop environment, and that's more on the shops themselves and their owners. But it could be a very lucrative and fun career for someone if the interest is there. So that's just my final words there.
I think, to be fair, for the potential service writer, for the service writer, and for the shop owner hiring a service writer, we've talked a lot about the multi-headed hydra that some of us can be in this role, but there is shops where the right fit is someone who just moves business across the table. That is also a perfectly fine fit if that's your skill set and you don't want to get into the other management pieces. There's plenty of shops and models where you could fit in and do that work, where you are specifically tasked with setting up and knocking down jobs to the business, and that's it. And that's fine too, from both sides of the table, right? As a prospective employee looking for work, and that's your skill set, great. There are plenty of places where that's what's needed. And from the owner perspective, again, hey, maybe you like a lot of the technical stuff you're doing, you just don't want to answer the phone. Okay, great. You can bring in someone who's just there to answer, schedule, and update that workflow. And if you can, if you have the space in the building essentially to support that volume, get after it.
Yeah, and to those shop owners who are super overwhelmed, who are just desperately looking for someone to plug and play, as much as I can encourage you just to take a pause, to take a breath and zoom out just a little bit, it'll take something that seems insurmountable and overwhelming, and if you can break it down into what are the most critical components, and you start from there, and you look not just to someone who's jumping from shop to shop to shop, but maybe in a potentially different industry, I think that you might find yourself a little bit more successful in some of your hiring. So think it through. Take 30 minutes, write it down on a piece of paper, give yourself that gift of time and to think through it, and you might surprise yourself.
Yeah, I think the final thought I'd have on this, and this might be a whole nother can of worms I'm going to open here, but if you're looking at service writing, or if you're an owner looking at a service writer, hiring a service writer, think through career pathing, right? So I'll say this as a former service writer who didn't have a ton of path, and now in the tech world where you're like, career pathing is the thing we talk about fairly regularly. One of the things that I left the industry for was not having a clear path for where to advance to as a service writer, as a tenured service writer who's been doing it for 10 years. I think if you're a shop owner fighting attrition, you're like, why are people leaving? Why am I having a hard time with staff retention? Because this is on a lot of shop owners' minds right now. Looking through and giving really clear, like, sure, maybe it's not a big organizational chart you can move your service writer up in, but giving them something that they're working towards achieving. And then if you're looking at that as a role, or if you want to own a shop someday, spend some time writing service, because it's going to get you, I don't know, I'll put a percentage. I'll say 75% of the experience you need to own a shop. If you're like, hey, that's the route I want to go someday, whether you're a technician, just coming in from the outside, go write service for a couple of years, because you're going to need those skills if you're running a shop really at any level. I think it would level up some of the techs that work in the industry. I think it would help a lot of people. I just pulling some of that together and trying to bundle up some of what we talked about there.
My final thought would be that I would make a terrible service writer. I have reinforced that after listening to everyone talk. I'm very process driven and have a hard time balancing all of those tasks at the same time and being moderately successful at all of them at the same time. So I think, that's probably my final thought there. But I think Gallagher is right as well. If you're interested in the automotive industry, considering running your own shop, doing that sort of thing, service writing is definitely going to fill in a lot of gaps in your mind as to what needs to take place to be profitable, when running a shop. So definitely, if automotive industry is something you're interested in, service writer might be a good entry level position to jump into when looking into the shop.
Yeah, I mean, my reflections on this conversation are I've definitely undervalued service writers in independent shops. And I think it's a very easy thing to do to as a consumer to not understand, all the different aspects of doing that job well and how integral they are into making a shop function in the way that it, functions. And so I'm finding some appreciation for that. And also wondering, the value of a service writer is not where it should be, in terms of compensation or other opportunities. And thinking about how shops can consider getting a win for that person and a win for them, whether it's through commission structures or just thinking about the model differently, because they are truly that face of your brand. And that's really important, whether you're one bay, single garage shop, or you're a multi-location, shop putting through hundreds of cars in a given week. I think it still is equally as important. So that's what I'm coming away with on this one. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, it's bridging kind of like the workforce shortage versus the way that we've traditionally looked at it. And I really liked the touching on some of those like intangibles. What are the things that you can be okay with somebody learning as they go? And what are the things maybe you don't sacrifice that for, but I love the idea of let's get a campaign to change the name. I think that there's a better way to identify all the skill sets that go on.
Hashtag campaign to change the name.
Change the name. Campaign.
Can we please zoom in on Mike's face every time Moretti says anything's a hashtag?
He's just gonna keep going like over and over again.
Hashtag
now that we've
myself.
got like the Prius hashtag connection, it's just not gonna stop.
It's not gonna stop.
Hashtag never stop stopping.
Okay. I don't know, Zach. I think we almost ended at that. I feel like these guys have gotten back to the hashtag conversation, and that's just like not where we are anymore.
Yep.
Hashtag callback. Hashtag full circle.
Yep. If you got a cool hashtag, please comment, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. For real though, let's come up with a cool name, dude.
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And just, remember, like, if legitimately you're interested in this or you have, things to contribute to this conversation, all of us are accessible on LinkedIn. So start a conversation with us directly, like, subscribe, or comment on any Shopmonkey channel. And just remember, this podcast is, brought to you by Shopmonkey, and there is a digital solution out there for you to help make your role as a service advisor even easier. And if you're interested in learning more about our product, you can go to our website at shopmonkey.com and, click on the link if you're watching this video. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to interact with you. If you're a car owner, what is your experience with service writers in the industry? Have you had good front of house experiences when getting your car worked on? And if you're one working in the shop, whether you're a technician, a service writer yourself, or an owner, what's your experience like? What's important to you? What are the skill sets that you think are beneficial? And how can you think that this role can be improved? Do we change the name? Is it not a valuable way of defining what this role is and how important it is in a shop? So
do we hashtag change the name?
Yes. Do we hashtag change the name? Tell us, let us know. That's it for now. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to the Tune Up podcast on whatever channel you're listening to it on. And have a great day.
Onward. See you guys.
Thank you, everyone.